Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wangani and I'm going to be sharing yet another book review with you. I'm so excited for this and I'm really happy that I've gotten back into a steady reading schedule. I was actually out for the whole of last week. I was out camping for work and I didn't have a lot of time, but then I was determined. I started reading this book on Monday and I was happy that I was able to finish reading it yesterday actually. So finding time in the evenings and at night before I went to bed just so that I could read and come and share this book review with you today. So the book for today is an exciting one. The book is called Sankofa and it is a book by Chibundu Onuzo. Yeah, and she is an author, an award-winning author, I must say, who has also had her books shortlisted for various prizes, and she's won a few as well. So she is a very popular author who has written several books before, one of which is called The Spider King's Daughter, and another one called Welcome to Lagos. And Sankofa is her newest book, so it was released this year. Yeah, I actually haven't read any of her previous books, but then I wanted to read this one because it's the one that everyone is talking about currently, and so I wanted to get my 2 cents in as well. The cover of the book is very pretty as usual. I feel I tend to be drawn to covers that are like really pretty and beautiful, and they tell some sort of a story. Yeah, on first impressions, I didn't know where the name came from. Sankofa, I thought it would be revealed, so I didn't really bother trying to do some research. But the meaning of the word is actually only revealed towards the end of the book. But I was able, I waited until the end, and I kept saying every time I stopped, I actually don't know why the book is called Sankofa. So I won't explain what the meaning is in case you're a person who wants to read the book and discover it for yourself, because I feel it is placed in a strategic way. It's revealed at the end because the meaning sort of, it's tied in beautifully with the character and the journey that she's on. Yeah, but if you are curious, of course, you can always Google and see what Sankofa means. It actually has a nice background where it comes from, and there's several proverbs that include it, and in a loose sense, it is just talking about going back. In some languages, it means to go back and retrieve something, or to go back and discover something from the past. And this is basically what the book is about. So the main character in the book the main character in the book is a lady called Anna, who is, I believe, 48 years old, and her mom dies, and so she is going through her mother's things, and she discovers a journal which belonged to her father. And she didn't know much about her father. Her mom had only told her her dad's name. And so she knew his name, but she didn't know where he was from or what he did. And her mom didn't really have a look. She never told her much about her father. And so she finds a journal that belonged to her dad. And so she begins to discover him first through the pages of his journal. And then she goes on this whole journey of going to try and find out more about him, trying to meet him, which she eventually does. And she discovers more about who he is and how he actually has changed. So he was one person in this journal that she read, and she felt like she came to know who he was through those pages, and yet his life had also taken a turn. And so she discovers that he became quite affiliated with politics, which he was to begin with. So in his journal, he had recently moved to the UK. He was from a country called Bamana, and he went to London to study, and so he was writing this journal while he was there, and that's where he also met her mother. So while he was in school, he was starting to discover quite a bit about racism and politics and the relationship between countries in the West and African countries, particularly his own. And so he became quite involved in student societies. What do they call it? Like a student society that dealt, where they would discuss these issues. And he actually eventually, when he went back to his home country, he went into politics as well. And so somehow, he got a very prominent position. I won't tell you what, but somehow his role and how where his journey took him changed him, and so he wasn't the person that she had come to know in the book, and so in his journal, and so she, when she meets him, she begins to ask questions and trying to figure out how or where along his journey he changed. Anyway, going back to my thoughts on this book. So first of all, the book got off to a slow start. I was really trying to get into it, and it felt like it was going to be an interesting story. But it took a while to pick up, I'll be honest. I kept reading and thinking, somehow, it's told from her, she's the narrator, so she's narrating her story. And yet, it seems very monotonous, and it's almost as if she's speaking in like bullet points. It's very short sentences. You don't really get to discover much about her personality. She doesn't seem to have much character, and it's a bit of a shame because she's the main character. The whole story is focused on her, and yet she seems very bland. I'll read just a few sentences so you can understand what I mean. So she says, I shut the diary. I did not want to meet my father in one sitting. I put the scrapbook and loose photos back in the box. I kept the books and Francis Agri's photograph. I double-locked my front door and checked the kitchen window was shut. I left the stair lights on to show I was awake. And then I'll skip a few lines. I went upstairs to my bedroom. I changed into my pajamas and turned off the lights. I still slept on one side of the bed. I won't reveal too much. But you see what I mean? It was very monotonous and just very I did this and I did that and then I went to do this, and it just felt very boring, I'll be honest. And the conversations, there weren't many conversations, and even, well, they were, but then some of the conversations she had with other people were very, again, the conversations were very just quite boring. She would talk to her daughter on the phone, and it would just be like, hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Kind of conversations. And so I felt, I don't know if it was just to set the tone of the book. I'm not sure. And the good thing is that it does alternate between current times and her, what she's reading in the journal. But even then, I felt like it was just a very slow start, to put it simply. So I think it could have been because, she is used to playing supportive roles. So she's a wife and she's a mother and she's a housewife. So she's just used to being in the background, I feel. Somehow she doesn't do much else with her life. And so it seems as though it's kind of setting that tone of her being, just being a side character and then coming into her own story. I don't know. I'm not sure if that was the intention of the book, but yeah. Thankfully, it does pick up in the last half of the book. It picks up quite a lot. Things become more descriptive. You can imagine things better. But there's definitely a lot going on. There's her life. There's her relationship with her husband and her daughter. And a few things from their lives as well. And, there's a lot of new characters that are introduced and you feel like they'll be significant. And yet somehow they do get pushed. Some of them get pushed to the side eventually. And so you wonder what the point of them being in the story was, other than to assist her on her journey. There wasn't really a lot of character depth, even for the main character, which is a bit of a shame, because you want to know a bit more about what she's thinking and, the people who she encounters, what they're thinking, like her father, getting to hear his point of view a bit more would have been nice. Anyway, the character, in her journey, she takes a lot of risks. So she does a lot of things that are a bit bizarre for someone who, you almost get the sense that she's going through a little bit of a midlife crisis, because she does things that are quite reckless and, she takes risks that are a bit strange in the people that she encounters and so on. Anyway, she survives. She lives. Oh, I don't know if that's a spoiler, but her story goes on, so it's great. But she does repeat a lot. The author does, as well as the main character. she repeats a lot, especially when it comes to names. She'll say her father's name like 100 times, and that's like both his first and second name. So it's just a bit like, okay, was it necessary to mention his whole name? We know who he is at this point. Yeah, but because you feel as though some things that are being repeated are going to be significant, and yet they aren't. No, there's no more, there's nothing that comes back to those things that are stated so many times. And so it's like, okay, what was the point of repeating it? So on. Yeah, but anyway, so a lot of the themes in the book are quite relatable. There's things to do with third world countries, Africa, wealth, race, and especially that she's a mixed race woman, so she's trying to really discover her identity, and she doesn't really feel like she fits in to both her current life and when she goes back to her father's country, Bamana. But it's really nice that it it has quite a lot of history to it, and even though Bamana is a fictional country, it actually is a real name of an empire, a kingdom that was in Mali at some point many years ago. And so it's nice that although the history it's fictional, it still is very relatable, and a lot of the things that it refers to kind of happened in different countries in Africa. And it's nice that it's really relatable. I mean, me coming from Zambia, there was a character called Thomas Piri, and you're like, hey, cousin, so it's really nice that it's very relatable. And some of the things that would happen in Bamana are things that could happen in any African country, Zambia included. A lot of the things were like, yep, I definitely can understand that, or that makes sense. Another thing that I really loved was how the author touched on several, there's a lot of themes, like I said, but then one of them being how the West perceives countries in Africa, and the way they view wealth and poverty, like I said. And there was one quote that I highlighted which says, that she was being told Anna was questioning something about the country, and she was being told, they're not poor. They're just not flooded with cheap foreign goods. They make their own clothes, they eat the food they have grown, they are healthy, their children are literate. Where is the poverty? And that was a nice question that made me stop and think, there's a lot of this going on nowadays as well, where, we also as Africans sometimes tend to think of ourselves as one way because we're not exactly the same as other countries, but then we have a culture and a lifestyle that is really rich, and it's just about being content in some ways. So that was something that I found quite interesting. But there's a lot to do with even African religion and their understanding of God. And it's really nice that she reconnects with her father, and she discovers and finds herself in a new way, and she gets given a new name, which just highlights how she has been this person all along, but she just needed this encounter with her father and with her past, or with her culture, to bring it to light that she's so much more than what she had limited herself to be. And so I feel like there was quite a lot that happened. There were some moments where it felt like a thriller. You just wondering, you're sitting on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen to her, what's going to happen next in the story. And there's quite a few nice plot twists in the middle and towards the end. I feel it does end. A lot of people have talked about the ending of the book and how they felt it might have been, some people really love it, some hate it. But I feel it was quite a nice ending. I loved how it ended, and it really summed it up perfectly, her whole journey. Although it would have been nice you wonder what happened when she went home and she explained to her daughter and her husband and her friends back at home about what she had experienced and how she perceived those things. But overall, I would say that it is quite an interesting book. It's quite an interesting book. I don't know how much I would recommend it, because it does, like I say, have a bit of a slow start. But it is a really interesting story, and especially if you're interested in history and that sort of thing of discovering a part of your life that you never knew before. So like I said in the beginning, I don't know if I mentioned it, I was quite keen to read this book, as it is one of Reese Witherspoon's, so it's part of it's the October pick of Reese's book club, which I'm part of. I've read quite a few books that Reese has suggested and is reading herself, and so that's why that was one of the reasons why I was really keen to get into it. So I'm not sure if I would say it's the best book from the book club that I've read so far, but it definitely has been an interesting pick, and yeah, I really look forward to reading more of her work. So thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you something further to think about in relation to the book. And yeah, I'm going to end here, and I will see you real soon. Bye now.